The dust storm hit Enid, Oklahoma territory on the worst possible day of Catherine Kane's life. The same afternoon she discovered her uncle had gambled away her family's cattle ranch to a stranger in a poker game that lasted 3 days and ended with a bullet through her uncle's heart. She stood in the cramped lawyer's office on the second floor of the mercantile building. Her navy traveling dress, already coated with the fine red dust that blew through every crack in the walls, listening to Mr. Pemberton explain how she now owned nothing but the clothes she wore and a mare that was too old to sell for more than $5. The year was 1889, and Catherine had traveled all the way from St. Louis expecting to help her uncle run the ranch her father had left to his brother before consumption took him 5 years prior. Instead, she found herself 22 years old, alone, and destitute in a territory that was still finding its footing after the land run just months earlier. "There must be something that can be done," Catherine said, keeping her voice steady even as her hands trembled in her lap. "My father built that ranch from nothing. Surely the law does not allow someone to simply take it based on a card game." Mr. Pemberton, a thin man with spectacles that kept sliding down his nose, shuffled through papers with the enthusiasm of someone who had delivered bad news so many times it no longer affected him. "Your uncle signed documents, Miss Kane. Legal documents. The ranch, all 300 acres, the cattle, the horses, everything now belongs to Mr. Lucas Vance. He arrived this morning to take possession. The name meant nothing to her. What kind of man takes a ranch from a dead man's niece? The kind who was owed a debt, I suppose." Pemberton removed his spectacles and cleaned them with a handkerchief. "Though I will say Mr. Vance seemed surprised to learn about you. Your uncle never mentioned family. Perhaps you could speak with him, come to some arrangement." Catherine stood, smoothing her skirts in a gesture that was more about maintaining dignity than vanity. "Where would I find this Mr. Vance? He is at the ranch as we speak, taking inventory of his new property." The ride out to the ranch took an hour, and Catherine spent every minute of it rehearsing what she would say. She would be reasonable but firm. She would explain the situation. Surely a decent man would understand. Perhaps he would agree to let her work off the debt, or they could arrange payments. Her mother's jewelry was in her trunk at the boarding house. Not worth much, but it might be a start. The ranch looked exactly as she remembered from the one summer she had visited as a girl, before her mother got sick, when everything in the world still seemed possible. The white house with its wide porch, the barn her father had painted red because her mother said it made her think of home in Pennsylvania, the corral where she had learned to ride. Seeing it now, knowing it was lost, felt like losing her father all over again. 3 horses stood tied at the porch, and she could hear voices inside the house. Catherine dismounted, tied her mare next to the others, and climbed the porch steps. The door stood open, probably to let in what little breeze the scorching August day offered. She stepped inside and found 3 men going through her uncle's belongings. One was emptying bookshelves, another was in the kitchen making an inventory of supplies, and the third stood studying a map of the property that hung on the wall. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a tan shirt with the sleeves rolled up and dark trousers tucked into worn leather boots. His hat hung on the back of a chair, revealing dark brown hair that needed cutting. When he turned at the sound of her footsteps, she saw a face that was weathered but not old, maybe 30 at most, with eyes so dark they looked almost black. "Can I help you, miss?" His voice was deeper than she expected, with a hint of something southern in the drawl. "I am Catherine Kane. This was my father's ranch." The 2 other men stopped what they were doing. The tall one, the one who must be Lucas Vance, studied her for a long moment before speaking. "Your uncle never mentioned you." My uncle was a drunk and a gambler, and apparently not a man who valued family. But that does not change the fact that my father built this ranch, and I have traveled 800 miles expecting to help run it. Your uncle lost it in a fair game. Nothing about taking a man's livelihood in a card game is fair, Mr. Vance. Catherine stepped further into the room, refusing to be intimidated. But I am not here to argue the morality of gambling. I am here to propose an arrangement. Lucas Vance tilted his head slightly, a gesture that reminded her of a dog hearing a strange sound. What kind of arrangement? I will work off the debt. I can cook, clean, manage accounts, even help with the cattle. My father taught me before he died. In exchange, you provide room and board, and we draw up a legal agreement that after a certain period, ownership transfers back to me. One of the other men, a stocky fellow with red hair and a sunburned face, actually laughed. You think you can run cattle, little lady? Catherine turned to him with a look that could freeze water. I think I can do whatever needs doing, and I think men who underestimate women generally regret it. Lucas Vance held up a hand to silence his companion. Let me understand this correctly. You want to work as hired help on what is now my ranch, with the hope that I will eventually give it back to you. Not give it back. Sell it back, at a fair price, with my labor counting toward the purchase. And if I say no? Catherine had prepared for this question, though the answer sat bitter on her tongue. Then I will go to the territorial governor and explain how a man was murdered over a card game and how his killer now profits from that murder. The room went silent. The red-haired man's hand drifted toward the gun at his hip, but Lucas Vance's voice cut through the tension. Nobody here killed your uncle, Miss Kane. He was shot by a man named Wesley Garrett after he was caught dealing from the bottom of the deck. Garrett was arrested and is currently in the territorial jail in Guthrie awaiting trial. Your uncle's death had nothing to do with me, except that it meant I took possession of this ranch one day earlier than expected. The news hit Catherine like a physical blow. Her uncle had been cheating. Of course he had. The man who could not hold onto anything her father had given him, who had drunk away opportunity after opportunity, would naturally cheat and get himself killed over it. She felt the last of her righteous anger deflate, leaving only desperation in its wake. I have nowhere else to go. The words came out softer than she intended. I have $30 and a trunk full of clothes. I cannot go back to St. Louis. There is nothing for me there. Lucas Vance looked at her for a long moment, and Catherine forced herself to meet his gaze. She would not cry, would not beg beyond what she already had. If he turned her out, she would figure something out. She had not survived losing her mother, her father, and the life she had known to crumble now. Can you actually cook? Lucas asked. Yes. Can you manage household accounts, order supplies, plan for winter provisions? Yes. He walked to the window, looking out at the land that now belonged to him. I will offer you a job, Miss Kane. Room and board plus $30 a month. You will manage the household, cook for me and my ranch hands, and help with the accounts. I make no promises about selling you the ranch. To be frank, I need this land and I paid dearly for it, even if your uncle was fool enough to bet it in a card game. It was not what she wanted, but it was more than she had any right to expect. I accept. There are rules. You will have the bedroom that I assume was your uncle's. My men and I will bunk in the barn until we can build a separate bunkhouse. You will conduct yourself with propriety at all times. This is a business arrangement, nothing more. I would expect nothing less, Mr. Vance. Lucas, if you are going to work here, we can dispense with the formalities. Catherine nodded. Then you may call me Catherine. The red-haired man spoke up. Boss, are you sure about this? Having a woman around might cause complications. Then I suggest you and Charlie avoid complications. Red. Lucas turned back to Catherine. These are my ranch hands, Red Murphy and Charlie Cross. They are good men who work hard. You will be respectful to them, and they will be respectful to you. Any problems, you bring them to me. Understood. Understood. Catherine moved into the house that afternoon, retrieving her trunk from the boarding house in town and trying not to think about how strange it felt to live in her father's house as an employee rather than family. The bedroom that had been her uncle's was filthy, smelling of whiskey and unwashed linens. She spent 3 hours cleaning it, scrubbing the floor, washing the windows, and burning the old sheets in the stove, before making up the bed with linens she found in a trunk that had belonged to her mother. Finding those linens, still wrapped in lavender sachets her mother must have packed years ago, nearly broke her composure. By evening, she had cleaned the kitchen and started dinner. The pantry was poorly stocked, but she found enough flour, dried beans, and salted pork to make a decent meal. When she called the men in from the barn at sunset, they came in dusty and tired, clearly surprised to find the table set and food waiting. Lucas washed up at the pump outside before entering, his hair wet and slicked back. He looked younger with his face clean of trail dust, though there was a hardness around his eyes that spoke of experiences Catherine could only imagine. "This looks good," he said, taking a seat at the head of the table. The meal passed in relative silence. The men focused on their food with the intensity of people who had spent too many months eating whatever they could cook over a campfire. Catherine ate sparingly, her stomach still too unsettled from the day's events to manage much appetite. "Where are you from, Lucas?" she asked, partly out of genuine curiosity and partly because the silence felt oppressive. He looked up from his plate. "Texas originally, Brazos County. My family had a small ranch there. They sold it after my father died. My mother moved to live with her sister in San Antonio. I had been working cattle drives north, saving money. When I heard about the land run here in Oklahoma Territory, I came to try my luck. Did not get land in the run itself, but I heard about your uncle's game and figured I had enough to buy into it. You gambled your life savings on a card game. I gambled on my ability to win a card game. There is a difference." He met her eyes across the table. "I know you think poorly of me, Catherine. I can see it in your face. But I did not cheat your uncle and I did not kill him. I won this land fairly and I intend to make something of it." "What will you do with it?" "Cattle, mainly. I want to build up a good herd, supply beef to the forts and the new towns springing up. This territory is growing fast. There is money to be made if a man is willing to work for it." Red Murphy spoke up around a mouthful of beans. "Boss is the best cattleman I have ever worked for. He knows horses, knows the land, and he is honest. You could do worse than working for him, Miss Kane." "I am sure you are right," Catherine said, though she could not keep a trace of stiffness from her voice. After dinner, the men returned to the barn while Catherine cleaned up. She stood at the kitchen window washing dishes, watching the sun set over land that should have been hers. The loss ached like a fresh wound, and she had to keep blinking back tears as she worked. She heard boots on the porch and turned to find Lucas standing in the doorway. "I wanted to apologize," he said. "For what?" "For the circumstances. I know this is not what you expected when you came here. If there was another way, I would consider it, but I need this land. I have been working toward this for 10 years. Catherine dried her hands on a towel. "Why tell me this?" "Because I think you deserve honesty, and because I want you to know that even though this is not your ranch, I will treat you with respect. You will have a place here as long as you want it." Something in his voice made her look at him more carefully. He stood with his hat in his hands, his expression serious, and Catherine realized he meant every word. It did not make the situation right, but it made it bearable. "Thank you," she said quietly. He nodded and left, and Catherine finished the dishes before retreating to her room. She sat on the edge of the bed, in the house her father had built, and finally allowed herself to cry for everything she had lost. The next weeks fell into a rhythm. Catherine woke before dawn to start breakfast, feeding the men before they headed out to work. She spent her days cleaning, cooking, and going through her uncle's chaotic records. The man had kept accounts like a child, scribbling notes on random pieces of paper, storing receipts in books, leaving debts unrecorded and payments unmarked. It took Catherine 3 days just to sort through the mess, and another week to create a proper ledger. Lucas came in one evening to find her surrounded by papers, her hair falling from its pins and ink staining her fingers. "How bad is it?" he asked. "Your 300 acres came with approximately $800 in debts," Catherine said, pushing a ledger toward him. "Your uncle owed money to the feed store, the blacksmith, 3 separate cattle buyers, and a horse trader in Guthrie. Some of these debts are over a year old." Lucas sat down heavily. $800. "I have organized them by priority. The feed store should be paid first since you will need to maintain credit there. The blacksmith second. The others can wait, though not indefinitely. You did all this." He picked up the ledger, flipping through pages of neat figures and careful notes. "You are paying me to manage the household accounts. These are household accounts." He looked at her with something like respect. "You have a head for numbers. My father taught me." He believed women should understand business as well as men. She gathered the papers into neat stacks. "If you pay off these debts over the next 6 months, you should be able to maintain good credit in town. I have also drawn up a budget for supplies through winter. You will need to buy feed, repair the barn roof before the snow comes, and hire at least 2 more hands if you intend to build up your herd." Lucas studied the budget she had written out. "Where did you learn all this?" "I told you, my father taught me." He ran a successful freight business in St. Louis before he got sick. I helped him with the books from the time I was 14. "Why did you not mention this when you first arrived?" Catherine met his eyes. "You were not inclined to listen to me when I first arrived. You saw a desperate woman making demands. Now you see an employee doing her job." A slight smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "I suppose that is fair." Over the following weeks, Catherine found herself watching Lucas more than she intended. He was up before dawn and worked until sunset, repairing fences, moving cattle, breaking new horses. He treated his men well, working alongside them rather than simply giving orders. When Red Murphy injured his hand on a piece of broken fence, Lucas was the one who cleaned the wound and bandaged it, sending Red to rest while he finished the job himself. He was quieter than Catherine expected from a man who made his living with cattle and cards. In the evenings after dinner, he often sat on the porch reading. She learned he had a small collection of books that he carried with him, mostly histories and a few novels. Once she caught him reading poetry, though he quickly closed the book when he noticed her watching. "You like Whitman?" she asked. He looked surprised. "You know Whitman? My mother loved poetry. She used to read to me in the evenings." Catherine sat in the chair across from him. "May I?" He handed her the book, and she paged through it, finding passages underlined, notes in the margins. This was a book that had been read many times, truly read, not just carried for show. "I dreamed in a dream I saw a city invincible to the attacks of the whole of the rest of the earth," she read aloud. "I dreamed that was the new city of friends." "Nothing so grand as that in Enid yet," Lucas said, "though people are trying." "Do you think of yourself as a builder, of cities, of community?" He was quiet for a moment. "I think of myself as someone trying to make a life worth living, the city building that is for other people." "A ranch is a kind of city," Catherine said. "A small one, but still a place where people work together toward something." "I suppose it is." He looked at her in the fading light. "You are not what I expected." What did you expect? I do not know. Someone angrier, perhaps. More bitter about the circumstances. Catherine handed back the book. Being angry will not change anything. I learned that when my father died. You can rage against unfairness all you want, but in the end, you still have to figure out how to live with it. That is a hard lesson. Most worthwhile lessons are. September brought cooler weather and more work. Lucas bought 60 head of cattle from a rancher selling out near Guthrie, and the days became a chaos of branding, counting, and moving animals. Catherine found herself roped into helping, quite literally, when one of the new heifers broke from the herd and Lucas needed someone to turn her back. "Can you ride?" he shouted over the noise of lowing cattle. Well enough. Catherine was already moving toward the horses. She had not ridden much since that long-ago summer, but it came back quickly, muscle memory taking over as she swung into the saddle. The heifer was fast, but Catherine was faster, cutting her off and turning her back toward the herd with a whoop that surprised everyone, including herself. Lucas rode up beside her, grinning. "You have been holding out on me. You never asked if I could ride. Can you rope? Not well. I will teach you. A woman who can manage accounts and turn cattle is worth her weight in gold out here." The compliment warmed her more than it should have. Over the next weeks, Lucas made good on his promise, teaching her to rope in the evenings after the regular work was done. She was terrible at first, missing throws, tangling her line, once managing to rope herself instead of the fence post she was aiming for. Lucas never laughed at her failures, just patiently showed her how to correct her stance, her grip, her release. "You are thinking too much," he said one evening. "You have to trust your hands to know what to do." "My hands have never done this before. They do not know what to do." He stepped behind her, his arms coming around to guide her hands on the rope. Catherine froze, suddenly intensely aware of his presence, the solid warmth of him against her back, the smell of leather and sage that seemed to follow him. "Like this," he said softly, his hands over hers as he showed her the motion. "See, let the rope do the work." They practiced the throw together, his hands guiding hers, and the rope sailed out in a perfect loop, settling around the fence post. Catherine let out a laugh of pure delight, and Lucas stepped back, though not before she felt him pause, his hands lingering on hers just a moment longer than necessary. "You did it," he said, his voice rough. Catherine turned to face him, the rope falling slack in her hands. They stood close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes, the slight scar above his left eyebrow. The air between them felt charged, electric, like the moment before a lightning strike. "Thank you," she said, "for teaching me. You are a good student." They stood there for a long moment, something unspoken passing between them. Then Lucas cleared his throat and stepped back. "It is getting dark. We should head in." Catherine nodded, not trusting her voice. As they walked back to the house, she found herself hoping he would say something, anything, to acknowledge what had just happened between them. But Lucas remained silent, and by the time they reached the porch, the moment had passed. That night, Catherine lay in bed unable to sleep, her hands still tingling from where Lucas had touched them. She told herself she was being foolish. He was her employer, nothing more. This was a business arrangement. She could not afford to complicate it with feelings that could only lead to disappointment. But her heart, it seemed, had not received that message. October brought the first frost, and a new problem. Catherine was in the kitchen making bread when Red Murphy burst through the door, his face pale. "Miss Kane is the boss here." He rode out to check the north pasture. "What is wrong, rustlers?" Charlie was doing a count and came up 20 head short, fresh tracks leading west. Catherine wiped flour from her hands. "How long ago?" "Maybe 2 hours." "Charlie is following the trail, but he will need help." Saddle my horse. I will leave Lucas a note. Red looked uncertain. Miss Kane, this could be dangerous. Which is why Charlie should not be alone and why we should not waste time arguing about it. She changed into riding clothes, strapped on the small pistol her father had given her years ago, and was mounted by the time Red had his own horse ready. They rode hard toward the north pasture, where they found Charlie waiting. "The trail leads toward the old garrison place," Charlie said, pointing toward a line of cottonwoods in the distance. "Looks like 4 riders driving the cattle." "We should wait for Lucas," Red said. "By the time we find him and get back, those cattle will be scattered across 3 counties," Catherine said. "Can we catch them if we ride now?" Charlie nodded slowly. "Maybe. If they stop to rest the cattle, we might catch up before they reach the river. Then let us go." They followed the trail for an hour, the tracks clear in the soft earth. Catherine's heart pounded, but she kept her breathing steady, her hand near her pistol. She was not sure what she would do if they actually caught up to the rustlers. She had never shot at a person, was not entirely sure she could. But those cattle represented Lucas's investment, his future, and she would not let them be stolen without a fight. The tracks led to a box canyon, and as they approached, they could hear cattle lowing. Charlie held up a hand and they dismounted, leaving their horses tied to a tree. "I will go see how many we are dealing with," Charlie whispered. He crept forward while Catherine and Red waited. The minutes stretched. Catherine was just beginning to worry when Charlie returned. "4 men like I thought. They have the cattle bunched in the canyon. Looks like they are planning to rebrand them." "What do we do?" Red asked. "We wait for the boss," Charlie said firmly. 4 against 3 are not good odds, especially with Miss Kane along. No offense, miss. None taken." "You are right." Catherine looked back the way they had come. "How long before Lucas might find us? Hard to say. He could be heading home now, could be another hour before he even knows something is wrong." They settled in to wait, watching the canyon mouth. Catherine was beginning to feel the cold, wishing she had brought her coat, when one of the rustlers emerged leading a horse to water. He was young, maybe 20, with a scrappy beard and a nervous way of moving. Red tensed beside her. "That is Tommy Garrett, Wesley Garrett's younger brother." Catherine's blood went cold. Wesley Garrett, the man who killed her uncle. "This is personal then," Charlie said quietly. "He is going after Lucas's cattle because his brother is in jail." Before Catherine could respond, shots rang out from behind them. She spun to see Lucas and 2 men she did not recognize riding hard toward the canyon, firing into the air. The rustlers burst from the canyon, scrambling for their horses. One went down, hit in the leg. The others, including Tommy Garrett, scattered in different directions. The fight was brief and chaotic. Lucas's group had the advantage of surprise, and the rustlers were more interested in escape than confrontation. Within minutes, 3 were fleeing across the plains, and one, the man who had been shot, lay on the ground being tied by one of Lucas's companions. Lucas rode up to Catherine, fury clear on his face. "What the hell are you doing here?" Red came to the house saying Charlie needed help. "I left you a note." "A note? You rode into a situation with armed rustlers and left me a note." His voice was tight with anger and something else, something that sounded like fear. "The cattle are safe," Catherine said, lifting her chin. "That is what matters." "No, what matters is that you could have been killed." He dismounted, his hands gripping her shoulders. "Do you understand that? If they had seen you, if shooting had started, you could have been killed. But I was not." "That is not the point, Catherine." His grip tightened and she could see real terror in his eyes. "You work for me, yes, but you do not risk your life for my cattle, do you hear me? Never again." Something in his voice, in the way he was looking at her, made Catherine's breath catch. This was not just an employer worried about an employee. This was something deeper, more personal. "I hear you," she said softly. Lucas released her shoulders, stepping back as if suddenly aware of how close they were standing. "Good. That is good." The wounded rustler was taken to the sheriff in Enid. He confessed that Tommy Garrett had organized the theft as revenge for his brother's imprisonment, figuring if he could hurt Lucas's operation, he could hurt the man who had benefited from Wesley's crime. The sheriff organized a posse to track down the other 3 rustlers, and Lucas rode with them, leaving Red and Charlie to manage the ranch. He was gone for 3 days, and Catherine found herself watching the horizon anxiously, jumping at every sound. She told herself it was concern for her employer, nothing more. But she knew she was lying. When Lucas finally rode in on the evening of the 3rd day, dusty and exhausted, Catherine was waiting on the porch. She had dinner ready, hot water warming for washing, and his bed made up in the house rather than the barn. "You are sleeping in the house tonight," she said before he could argue. "You look half dead, and I will not have you walking to the barn only to collapse in the mud." "Catherine, there is a guest room. You will use it. This is not a discussion." Too tired to argue, Lucas agreed. After he washed and ate, he collapsed onto the guest bed, asleep almost before his head hit the pillow. Catherine stood in the doorway watching him sleep, his face relaxed in a way she rarely saw during the day. She wanted to go to him, to smooth the hair back from his forehead, to tell him things she had no right to say. Instead, she quietly closed the door and went to her own room, where she lay awake for hours, trying to ignore the fact that he was sleeping just down the hall, and that her heart ached with wanting him close. The next morning, Lucas was gone before she woke, already out working as if the previous days had not happened. But something had shifted between them. She noticed it in small ways, the way his eyes followed her when she moved around the kitchen, the way he found excuses to come to the house during the day, asking questions about supplies or accounts that he could have saved for evening, the way he lingered after dinner, talking about everything and nothing while the sun set outside. November brought colder weather and shorter days. Catherine ordered supplies for winter, making sure they had enough food, feed, and firewood to last through the harsh months ahead. Lucas hired 2 more hands, brothers named Frank and Tom, who had worked ranches in Kansas and were looking for permanent positions. With more mouths to feed, Catherine's workload increased. She spent her days cooking, baking, and preserving. Lucas helped when he could, chopping wood, hauling water, taking on tasks that were not strictly necessary but gave him reasons to be near her. One afternoon, while she was making pies for the evening meal, Lucas came in with an armload of wood. "I thought you might need this," he said, stacking it by the stove. "Thank you, though I filled the box just this morning." "Well, now you will not have to fill it tomorrow." He lingered, watching her roll out dough. "You are good at that," Catherine smiled. "It is just pie crust, Lucas, not exactly skilled labor. Still, you make it look easy." She stopped rolling and looked at him. "Is there something you need?" "You have been in and out of this kitchen 5 times today, and I know it is not because of a sudden passion for watching me cook." Lucas leaned against the door frame, his arms crossed. "Can I not just want to see you?" The words hung in the air between them. Catherine's hand stilled on the rolling pin, her heart suddenly pounding. "Lucas, I know," he said quickly. "I know this is complicated. I know you are my employee and I am your employer, and there are a dozen reasons why I should not be saying this. But Catherine, I cannot keep pretending that I do not feel something when I am around you. I cannot keep acting like it does not matter whether you are here or not, because it does. It matters more than anything." Catherine set down the rolling pin, her hands dusted with flour. "What are you saying?" He pushed off from the door frame, crossing to stand in front of her. I am saying that somewhere between your terrible first rope throws and your stubborn refusal to let rustlers steal my cattle, I fell in love with you. I am saying that when I rode into that canyon and saw you could have been in danger, I nearly lost my mind. I am saying that I do not want a housekeeper or an employee. I want you, Catherine. I want you as my partner, my wife, the person I build this ranch with. Catherine stared at him, unable to speak. This was everything she had not let herself hope for, standing in front of her, real and solid and terrifying. When I came here, she said slowly, I expected to negotiate a business arrangement. A handshake agreement at best, where I would work to earn back what was rightfully mine. I never expected this. I never expected you. I know I have no right to ask. I know this ranch should be yours, and instead, I am the man who took it from you. Stop. Catherine reached up, placing her hand against his cheek. You did not take anything from me. My uncle lost it through his own actions. What you did was give me a place when I had nowhere else to go. You gave me work, respect, and somehow, without me noticing, you gave me a reason to stop grieving the past and start thinking about the future. Does that mean? It means I love you too, Lucas Vance. It means I would rather be here with you, working this ranch together than anywhere else in the world, even if it means being your wife instead of being the owner. He pulled her close, and she went willingly, flour-dusted hands and all. His kiss was gentle at first, questioning, and then deeper as she responded. Catherine felt as if she had been waiting for this moment all her life, this feeling of rightness, of coming home. When they finally broke apart, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. I want to do this right. I want to court you properly, let people know my intentions. And then I want to marry you, Catherine. I want to stand up in front of this whole territory and promise to love you for the next 50 years. She laughed, the sound full of joy. You are very specific about the number of years. I would promise forever, but 50 seems more believable. Then I accept your courtship, Lucas Vance, and your promise of 50 years, though I will hold you to forever anyway. He kissed her again, and Catherine thought that perhaps losing her ranch had been the best thing that ever happened to her, because it brought her here to this moment, to this man who looked at her like she was worth more than all the land in Oklahoma Territory. They told the ranch hands that evening over dinner. Red whooped and clapped Lucas on the back. Charlie smiled quietly and said he had known weeks ago from the way Lucas watched Catherine move around the kitchen. Frank and Tom, the new hands, congratulated them both, clearly pleased at the prospect of steady employment on a ranch that would be a family operation. The next Sunday, Lucas drove Catherine into Enid in the wagon, sitting close beside her on the bench seat, their hands intertwined between them. He bought her a ring at the jeweler's shop, a simple gold band with a small diamond that caught the light. It is not much, he said as he slipped it onto her finger. It is perfect. They were married 3 weeks later, on a cold December morning, in the small church that had been built just that year. Catherine wore a dress she had made herself from fabric Lucas insisted on buying, a deep blue wool that brought out her eyes. Lucas wore his best suit, looking uncomfortable in the formal clothes but standing tall and proud beside her. The church was full of people they barely knew, townspeople curious about the couple, ranchers who did business with Lucas, women from the charitable society that Catherine had joined. But Catherine only had eyes for Lucas, standing beside her, promising to love and cherish her, to be her partner and companion for all the years to come. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Lucas kissed her with such tenderness that Catherine felt tears prick her eyes. This was not the life she had planned, but it was better than anything she could have imagined. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the barn and food contributed by half the territory, it seemed. People danced to music from a fiddle and guitar, drank cider, and celebrated the young couple who represented everything people loved about this new territory: hope, hard work, and the courage to build something from nothing. As the evening wore on, Lucas pulled Catherine outside, away from the noise and warmth of the barn. They stood on the porch of their house, looking out at the land silvered by moonlight. "Are you happy?" he asked. Catherine leaned against him, his arm coming around her shoulders. "Happier than I knew I could be. I want to do something," Lucas said. "I have been thinking about it for weeks, and now seems like the right time." "What?" He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "I want to put this ranch in both our names, legal and binding." "You were right that first day. This was your father's land. It should be yours again, or at least half yours. We build this together, we should own it together." Catherine felt her eyes fill with tears. "Lucas, you do not have to do that." "I know I do not have to. I want to." "You are my wife now, my partner. That means we share everything, good and bad, profit and loss. What do you say, Catherine Vance? Will you be my partner in this ranch?" "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." He kissed her then, deep and long, a kiss full of promise and passion. When they finally broke apart, Catherine was breathless, her heart racing. "We should go back inside," she said, though she made no move to do so. "Or," Lucas said, his voice low, "we could go to our room. Let the guests celebrate without us." Catherine smiled, taking his hand. "I like that idea much better." Their first winter together was hard but happy. The work did not stop just because they were newlyweds. If anything, it increased. Catherine found herself working alongside Lucas in ways she never had as just his employee. They planned together, made decisions together, argued about things like feed suppliers and whether to buy more land come spring. In January, a blizzard hit that lasted 3 days, trapping them all in the house. The ranch hands stayed in the barn with the animals, making sure the livestock stayed warm and fed. Catherine and Lucas kept the fire going, melting snow for water, rationing their food supplies. On the second night, when the wind howled so loud they could barely hear each other speak, Lucas pulled Catherine close on the sofa they had dragged near the fireplace. "Tell me about your father," he said. "Really tell me. I want to know the man who built this place." So Catherine told him. She told him about her father's laugh, how he could find humor in any situation. She told him about his love for her mother, how he had courted her with poetry and persistence. She told him about the day he got sick, how he had made her promise to be strong, to take care of herself, to find love when she was ready. "I think he would have liked you," she said finally. "He believed in men who worked hard and kept their promises. I hope I am living up to that." "You are. Every day you are." They made love that night with the fire warming them, the wind howling outside, the world reduced to just the two of them and the life they were building together. Afterward, Catherine lay in Lucas's arms, listening to his heartbeat, and thought that she had never felt safer or more loved. Spring came with a rush of activity. Calving season kept everyone busy around the clock. Catherine found herself helping deliver calves, staying up all night with Lucas when a difficult birth required 2 sets of hands. She learned to recognize the signs of trouble, to help a calf find its feet, to coax a reluctant mother to nurse. In April, Lucas came to Catherine with news. "The ranch next to ours is selling. Old man Preston died and his widow wants to move back east. It is 150 acres, good grazing land, already fenced. I am thinking we should buy it." Catherine looked at the figures he had written out. "It will take all our savings." "I know. But it is good land, Catherine. It would nearly double our size. We could run twice the cattle, bring in more income." "What does your instinct tell you?" Lucas smiled. My instinct says take the risk, but I promised we make these decisions together. What does your instinct say? Catherine studied the numbers, thought about what she knew of the Preston land, considered their current financial position. My instinct says you are right. We should buy it. They bought the Preston land in May, signing papers at the lawyer's office in Enid, walking out as the owners of 450 acres. Lucas picked Catherine up and spun her around right there on the street, laughing like a boy. We did it, he said. We really did it. That night, lying in bed, Catherine placed Lucas's hand on her stomach. I have something to tell you. He looked at her, his eyes searching her face. What? I am pregnant. The baby will come in the fall, probably late October or early November. For a moment, Lucas just stared. Then his face broke into the biggest smile Catherine had ever seen. He kissed her, then kissed her stomach, then kissed her again. A baby, he said wonderingly. We are going to have a baby. Are you happy? Happy, Catherine, I am the happiest man in Oklahoma Territory. No, in the whole country, maybe the whole world. The pregnancy was not easy. Catherine was sick most mornings through June, exhausted by the heat of July and August. But Lucas was attentive, taking on more of her work, bringing her cold water from the well, fanning her on the hottest days. On a warm night in September, they sat on the porch watching the sun set. Catherine's belly was round and prominent now, the baby active inside her. Have you thought about names? Lucas asked, his hand resting on her stomach, feeling the baby kick. For a boy, I thought we could name him after my father. James Vance, I like it. And if it is a girl, Rose, after your mother. Lucas looked at her, surprised. You would do that, she raised a good man. That deserves to be honored. He pulled her close as her belly would allow. I love you, Catherine. I do not say it enough, but I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. I love you too. And I am glad I came to Oklahoma Territory, even though I lost my inheritance. Because if I had not, I never would have found you. You did not lose your inheritance, Lucas said. You just found a different one than you expected. The baby came on a cold November night during the first snow of the season. Catherine labored for 12 hours with the doctor from town and a midwife in attendance. Lucas paced in the front room, wearing a path in the floorboards, until finally, just before dawn, he heard the thin wail of a baby crying. The midwife emerged with a smile. Congratulations, Mr. Vance. You have a son. Lucas rushed into the bedroom to find Catherine exhausted but glowing, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. The baby had a shock of dark hair and was wailing his displeasure at being born. Meet James Lucas Vance, Catherine said, her voice hoarse. Lucas sat carefully on the edge of the bed, looking down at his son with wonder. He is perfect. He is loud. He is perfect and loud. Lucas touched the baby's tiny hand, marveling when small fingers wrapped around his. Hello, James. I am your father, and I promise to love you and protect you and teach you everything I know about ranching, even though right now I feel like I do not know anything at all. Catherine laughed, then winced. You will learn. We will learn together. Those first weeks with a baby were exhausting and wonderful. James was a good baby, relatively content, though he had strong opinions about when he wanted to eat and sleep. Catherine recovered slowly, and Lucas took over more of the household work, learning to cook basic meals and clean, though never quite as well as Catherine did. Red Murphy turned out to have a gift with babies, singing old Irish songs that somehow always got James to stop crying. Charlie carved toys, and Frank and Tom took turns keeping watch at night so Lucas and Catherine could sleep. By Christmas, they had found their rhythm as a family. Catherine was back to managing the household, though with help from a young woman named Mary from town who came twice a week. Lucas had hired another ranch hand, and the operation was running smoothly. On Christmas Eve, they gathered everyone in the house for dinner. The table was crowded with ranch hands, Mary and her husband, the doctor and his wife who had become friends. They ate roast beef and potatoes, apple pie and fresh bread. James slept in a cradle by the fire, occasionally making small noises that had everyone smiling. After dinner, Lucas stood and raised his glass. "I want to thank all of you for being here, for helping build this ranch into what it is. A year ago, I was a man with land and hope. Now I have a home, a family, friends, and a future. That is because of the people in this room, so thank you, all of you." "Hear, hear," Red called out, and everyone drank. Later, after everyone had gone, Lucas and Catherine sat by the fire with James between them, watching the flames dance. "It has been a year," Catherine said softly. "A year since we married. Best year of my life. Mine too." She looked at him, this man who had offered her not just a job but a partnership, not just a business arrangement but a lifetime of love. "Do you remember what you said? About offering me your hand to hold for 50 years? I remember. I am holding you to that, Lucas Vance. 50 years minimum." He took her hand, threading their fingers together. "50 years it is, though I suspect I will still be holding your hand long after that." The years that followed were full and rich. They had 3 more children, a daughter named Rose in 1892, another son they called Thomas in 1894, and finally another daughter, Grace, in 1897. The ranch grew with their family, expanding to nearly 1,000 acres by 1900. James grew into a serious boy who loved the cattle as much as his father did, following Lucas around from the time he could walk. Rose was wild and fearless, riding before she was 5 and handling a rope by 7. Thomas was the dreamer, preferring books to ranching, though he did his share of work without complaint. Grace was the baby, adored by everyone, with a gift for gentling horses that had even experienced ranch hands shaking their heads in wonder. Catherine and Lucas settled into the comfortable rhythm of long marriage. They still argued sometimes, about money or decisions, or how to handle a difficult child. But they always came back together, remembering that they were partners, that what they had built was bigger than any single disagreement. On their 10th anniversary, Lucas arranged for the children to stay with neighbors for the weekend and took Catherine back to Enid, renting a room at the new hotel that had been built. "This is very fancy," Catherine said, looking around the room with its real wallpaper and glass windows. "I wanted to remind you that I can still court you properly," Lucas said, pulling her close. "Lucas Vance, you have given me 4 children and a ranch. I think we are past courting. Never. I intend to court you for the rest of our lives." He had arranged for dinner in the hotel restaurant, a luxury Catherine rarely experienced. They ate slowly, talking about everything except children and cattle, remembering what it felt like to just be Lucas and Catherine, not parents or ranchers, just 2 people in love. That night in the hotel room, Lucas made love to Catherine with the slow thoroughness of a man who knew his wife's body intimately but never took it for granted. Afterward, Catherine lay in his arms, feeling younger than she had in years. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For remembering that we are more than just business partners. For reminding me why I fell in love with you. You make it easy to remember. Even after 10 years, even with 4 children and 1,000 acres, I still look at you and feel like the luckiest man alive." The 20th century brought changes to Oklahoma Territory. Statehood was coming. Everyone said so. Towns were growing, railroads spreading. The wild frontier they had come to was settling into something more civilized, more predictable. In 1907, when Oklahoma became a state, Lucas and Catherine stood with their children watching the celebrations in Enid. James was 17 now, tall and strong, already talking about taking over more of the ranch operations. Rose was 15, beautiful and independent, with suitors that Lucas pretended not to notice. Thomas was 13, his nose always in a book, talking about maybe going to college back east. Grace was 10, still young enough to hold Catherine's hand but old enough to have opinions about everything. "Things are changing," Lucas said, watching the parade pass by. "Things always change," Catherine replied. "That is life. Are you happy with how they have changed?" She looked at him, this man who had aged well, with silver threading his dark hair and lines around his eyes from years of squinting into the sun. "I could not be happier. This life, this family, this is everything I did not know I wanted when I came here 18 years ago." Lucas took her hand, the gesture so familiar after all these years that Catherine barely registered it. But she squeezed back, a silent acknowledgement of everything they had built together. James took over more of the ranch work as the years passed, proving himself a capable manager with his father's instinct for cattle and his mother's head for business. When he was 20, he married a girl named Alice from a neighboring ranch, and Lucas and Catherine became grandparents within the year. Rose surprised everyone by becoming a teacher, opening a school for ranch children in the area. She married late, at 28, to a quiet veterinarian named Samuel who adored her fierce independence. Thomas went east to college as he had always wanted, studying literature, but he came back after graduation, unable to stay away from the land that had raised him. He became a writer, documenting the history of Oklahoma and the families who had built it. Grace married a rancher named Paul and moved to a property 20 miles away, close enough to visit, but far enough to have her own life. In 1920, on their 30th anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. There were 15 grandchildren by then, ranging from infants to teenagers, and the house that had once seemed so large now felt comfortably full. Catherine stood in the kitchen, preparing food with her daughters and daughters-in-law, listening to the chatter of children outside, and felt deeply content. This was what she and Lucas had built, not just a ranch but a legacy, not just a business but a family that would continue long after they were gone. Lucas found her there, his hands coming to rest on her shoulders. "Happy anniversary, Catherine." She turned in his arms, not caring that her daughters were watching. "Happy anniversary, Lucas. 30 years," he said. 20 more to go to make my 50-year promise. I remember. You have been holding my hand for 30 years instead of offering me a handshake agreement. Best decision I ever made." Their children and grandchildren had organized a party, with tables set up outside, music and dancing, food enough to feed the whole county. As the sun set, Lucas pulled Catherine onto the makeshift dance floor and they swayed together to music from a phonograph, surrounded by family. "Do you ever regret it?" Catherine asked. "The way we started with me showing up demanding my inheritance?" "Never." "Do you regret losing your ranch to a stranger?" "I did not lose it. I found something better. I found us." The 1920s brought prosperity to the ranch. Cattle prices were high, and with James and his family now living on the property, the operation ran smoothly. Lucas, in his 60s now, began to slow down, letting his son take over more responsibility. He and Catherine spent more time together, taking walks in the evening, reading on the porch, enjoying the luxury of time that they had not had when building the ranch. On a warm June evening in 1929, they celebrated their 40th anniversary with a quiet dinner, just the two of them. The big celebrations were for milestone years ending in 0 or 5, but Lucas insisted on marking every year, saying each one was a gift. 40 years, Catherine said, looking at her husband across the table. He was 70 now, his hair completely silver, his face lined but still strong. You have kept your promise, Lucas Vance. Not yet. I still owe you 10 more years. You have already given me more than I ever dreamed of. After dinner, they walked to the top of a hill overlooking the ranch. They could see the original house, expanded now to accommodate visiting family, the new bunkhouses, the large barn James had built, the corrals and pastures stretching as far as the eye could see. We did this, Lucas said, gesturing to the view. You and I, we built this from nothing. From a losing poker hand and a desperate agreement, Catherine added with a smile. From love, Lucas corrected. Everything good we built came from love. He took her hand, the gesture as natural as breathing after 40 years. Catherine looked down at their intertwined fingers, his weathered and calloused from a lifetime of work, hers marked with age spots and wrinkles. They were not the young people who had stood in this house arguing about ownership and employment. They were not even the newlyweds who had faced their first winter together. They were something more now. Two people so deeply connected that sometimes Catherine did not know where she ended and Lucas began. The economic crash of 1929 affected everyone, but the ranch survived. They had always been careful with money, thanks to Catherine's management, and they had enough saved to weather the Depression years. They sold cattle at a loss, tightened their belts, helped neighbors who had less and made it through. In 1935, on a cold February morning, Lucas did not get up for breakfast. Catherine found him still in bed, his breath shallow, his skin pale. The doctor diagnosed a weak heart, saying Lucas had probably been dealing with it for months but had not wanted to worry anyone. You foolish man, Catherine said, sitting beside him, holding his hand. You should have told me. What could you have done? Lucas asked, his voice weak but still with that familiar warmth. Worried, loved you, made sure you rested more. I've had a good life, Catherine. If my time is coming, I am ready. Well, I am not ready. You promised me 50 years, Lucas Vance, and we are only at 46. You owe me 4 more, he smiled. I will do my best. Lucas rallied, improving enough by spring that he was taking short walks again, sitting on the porch in the evenings. But Catherine could see the change in him, the way he tired easily, the way he sometimes had to pause to catch his breath. She stayed close, treasuring every moment, every conversation, every time he took her hand. They celebrated their 47th anniversary quietly, just the two of them and immediate family. Lucas was tired but happy, surrounded by children and grandchildren who loved him. That night, Catherine helped him to bed and lay down beside him, her head on his shoulder like she had done for nearly 5 decades. I love you, Lucas said into the darkness. I have loved you since the day you stood in this house covered in dust, demanding that I give you back your ranch. I love you too, more than I can say, Catherine. If something happens to me, stop. Listen. If something happens, I want you to know that these years with you have been the best of my life. You made me better than I was. You gave me a home, a family, a reason to build something lasting. I have no regrets except that 50 years is not enough. I could have loved you for 100 and still wanted more. Catherine felt tears on her cheeks. Then you had better keep your promise and give me the full 50 years. Lucas kissed her forehead. I will try, my love. I will try. He made it 3 more years. On a bright October morning in 1938, Lucas Vance died peacefully in his sleep, Catherine's hand in his. He was 79 years old. They had been married for 49 years, 11 months, and 3 weeks, just weeks shy of his 50-year promise. The funeral was massive, with people coming from across the state to pay their respects. Lucas Vance had been a pillar of the community, a successful rancher, a good neighbor, a beloved husband and father. Catherine stood through it all with dry eyes, accepting condolences, thanking people for coming. She did not cry, not at the funeral, not at the burial, not when everyone left and she was alone in the house that felt too empty without him. James was worried. "Mama, are you all right?" "I am fine." "You have not cried." "I will. When I am ready." She finally cried a week later when she was going through Lucas's things and found his old copy of Whitman, the one he had been reading the first time she sat on the porch with him. Inside the front cover, he had written her a note dated just months before his death. "My dearest Catherine, when you read this, I will be gone. I am sorry I could not give you the full 50 years I promised, but know that every moment I had with you was a gift. You were my partner, my love, my everything. Take care of our family, our ranch, our legacy. And know that wherever I am still holding your hand. Forever yours, Lucas." Catherine sat on the floor of their bedroom, clutching the book to her chest, and sobbed. She cried for the future they would not have, for the time they had lost, for the fact that death had claimed him just weeks before their 50th anniversary. She cried until she had no tears left, and then she sat in the silence, feeling Lucas's absence like a physical pain. But life continued, as it always does. The ranch needed managing, grandchildren needed attention, and Catherine found purpose in continuing what she and Lucas had built. She lived in the house they had shared, walking the land they had worked together, holding on to memories and love. On what would have been their 50th anniversary, Catherine stood on the same hill where they had stood on their 40th, looking out at the ranch. Her children had come, bringing grandchildren and even great-grandchildren she had not met before. The family had grown so large she could barely keep track of everyone. Rose came to stand beside her mother, sliding her arm through Catherine's. "Are you all right, Mama?" "I am. I was just thinking about your father and his promise. The 50 years, he almost made it. Almost." "Mama, I think he did make it. Maybe not in years, but in love. You two had more love in 49 years than most people have in a lifetime. I think that counts." Catherine smiled, squeezing her daughter's arm. "You are right. We did have that, did we not?" That evening, with the whole family gathered, Catherine told stories about Lucas, about how they met, about his promise to hold her hand for 50 years, about the life they built together. The grandchildren who had known him shared their memories, and the great-grandchildren listened with wide eyes to tales of a grandfather they would never meet, but who had shaped their family in countless ways. Catherine lived another 10 years, remaining sharp and active well into her 80s. She saw the ranch continue to prosper under James's management, saw her grandchildren marry and have children of their own, saw the family she and Lucas had created continue to grow and thrive. She died peacefully in her sleep in 1948, at the age of 82. The family found her in the bed she had shared with Lucas, a smile on her face, his old Whitman book on her nightstand. Next to the book was a note in her handwriting, written just days before her death. "My beloved Lucas, I am coming to find you. Thank you for 49 years, 11 months, and 3 weeks. Thank you for the children, the grandchildren, the life we built. You offered me your hand to hold for 50 years. I held it as long as I could in this life, and I will hold it again in the next. Wait for me. All my love, Catherine." The ranch stayed in the family for generations, passed down through James's line, and then through his children. The original house was preserved, turned into a small museum documenting the history of the Vance family and the settlement of Oklahoma Territory. Visitors could see the kitchen where Catherine had made her first meal, the porch where Lucas had read poetry, the bedroom where 4 children had been born. But more than the physical buildings, what lasted was the story. The story of a woman who came west expecting a handshake agreement, and found a lifetime of love instead. The story of a cowboy who offered his hand to hold for 50 years and kept that promise every single day. The story of a partnership built on respect, love, and hard work that created a legacy lasting far beyond their years together. In the small cemetery on a hill overlooking the ranch, two headstones stood side by side. Lucas Vance, 1859–1938, beloved husband and father. And next to it, Catherine Kane Vance, 1866–1948, beloved wife and mother. Below their names, a single line appeared on both stones, together for 50 years and forever after, because in the end they had made it to 50 years. Not in the way Lucas had originally promised, not in uninterrupted time on earth, but in love, in memory, in the family they created and the legacy they left behind. They were still holding hands, still partners, still together. And that, Catherine would have said, was worth more than any handshake agreement ever could be.